Yeah, let's probably just dive into the subject. So, talking about your last role at Amazon a little bit. What looked the team like? How many people were there? What kind of roles? What kind of projects did you work on? Can you shed a bit of light on that?
So the last role at Alexa, we were building out the offline Alexa, and two big use cases. One is around the house, and we've already launched it last year in 2018. It's called local voice control. And the other big use case was in cars. As you can imagine, if you're driving, the last thing you want to do is touch the screen or fiddle with buttons. It is so much easier if you can just ask the car to either switch on the heating, lower your windows, lock the door, all of that stuff. So those were the two big use cases that my team at Alexa was working on. The whole team was starting out of Toronto, so it was a very tiny team at first, and it's growing overnight, sort of. We're expanding. Of course, there are data scientists. There's a big team out of Pittsburgh that works on that. We have an engineering team both in Toronto and actually in Poland. And we have a big team in Toronto now. But it's grown over time. Product management part is still small, so there were just two of us managing the whole space.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe interesting for us, quick show of hands. Who of you has a smart speaker at home that comes with a smart assistant? And then keep your hands up if it's an Alexa device.
Yay.
Interesting, yeah. So
I have 5 of them in my house.
Okay.
And we just ordered another 4 of them on Black Friday deals because our washrooms don't have Alexas, and we thought it was a big gap in our house. But like in terms of data, I feel like I think it was VoiceSpot or one of those sources that says there are 40 million households with smart speakers in their houses. 10% of Germany, 10% in Canada, and about 20% in US that has
and quickly growing,
speakers.
right?
Quickly growing, yes. Even voice sales right now, it's like 2 billion in US, but is forecast to become 40 billion by 2022.
Right.
That's a huge growth in sales.
Yeah.
And that's why I think voice interfaces are becoming so important, because it's growing so fast.
Definitely. I also find it fascinating that the adoption rate is way faster than in terms of smartphones. So we often used to underestimate new technologies in a way, and that's rolling out quite fast. So even more exciting to have you here today. So what do you think are still the major challenges for Alexa, for example, in terms of speech recognition, natural language understanding? Do you see things going?
Yeah, I'm not speaking just about Alexa, but
Sure.
Alexa or Google or Siri, of all the voice interfaces. I think with voice interfaces, as people, our general bar is really high. Because when you are dealing with a screen and buttons, the expectation is different. If something goes wrong, we just assume we are clumsy. But when you speak to Alexa and it doesn't understand, because we talk all the time, our patience is much lower. This is the most natural thing to do, like talk. And so when somebody, even if that's Alexa or Google, doesn't understand you, people really lose patience. So the bar is really, really high for voice interfaces. But as we build out, I think it's already at an inflection point on the cliched S curve, and we would see a frenzied growth. We are already seeing that. And the growth is not just software. So when I say software, it includes machine learning, but also the hardware and the frameworks. Because you would have software and machine learning models, and we're talking about ASR, NLU. How many of you are familiar with ASR or automatic speech recognition? Okay, only a few. Let me take a step back. So when the voice-activated devices work, the first part is automatic speech recognition, or ASR, which is basically when you say something, effectively converting into literally text. So if you say, "Hello, Alexa," it will say HELLO, ALEXA. That's the first part. Then it has to interpret what you really meant, which is the natural language understanding. So if I say, "Alexa, switch on my bedroom," It's like, okay, this person tried to switch on something called bedroom. And then you finally have to interpret it, which is entity resolution, which is saying, okay, what does that mean? Does that mean switching on a light device? And so once all these three parts are done, then it has to finally talk to the switch and say, hey, by the way, this guy is asking you to just switch yourself on, so can you do that? And the switch turns itself on. But then this whole process means that at every stage, the inference has to be right. The customer should not end up at a dead end or not have to go back and forth. And the customer doesn't have to repeat themselves. All of this ensures that machine learning models that are behind this work perfectly. Sometimes I don't understand my husband or my mom or my brother, and I blame Alexa when Alexa doesn't understand what I am saying. So clearly, it is not an easy problem. But then this is only one part. The second bigger part is for voice interfaces or AI to be ubiquitous or everywhere. Like if I could talk to the bottle and say, can you open it yourself and like come to me? If I could do that, for that to happen, you not only need good software, you need good hardware, because it has to be processed somewhere. And you cannot always count on cloud servers to process that or large machines, which means you need new developments in the hardware side. So you need accelerators, and everybody is working on it. Microsoft is working on FPGAs for their HoloLens augmented reality. Tesla is building their own accelerators. Apple is building their accelerators. So everybody is also trying to improve the hardware that will help run these models quickly. So the table doesn't have to be connected to the internet, but if it has the right hardware, it will understand that I want it to be closer because the bottle is too far away. But then for it to be everywhere, that's important. And finally, you need some sort of common standards, which is yet to emerge in the voice space. Because you have Zigbee is one standard, you have Z-Wave, that's another, you have Wi-Fi, and you have everybody building hardware for their own models. So Amazon doing its thing, Apple doing its own thing, Google doing its own thing. But how do I compare which one's better than the other? Because everybody made the hardware and the software based on what they were solving for. So we were working for offline car functionality. We solved it for one specific thing. And so some sort of standards need to emerge. And once you have the software, the hardware, and the frameworks, then you can see the explosion happen quickly.
Given the many, many chances that there are, like, to still improve the voice experience, what do you think? What is the way how Amazon picks these projects, prioritizes them? I mean, that's also driven by you, and then others actually taking the responsibility. But can you walk us through the decision-making process on how that's getting prioritized at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, across all projects at Amazon, it's pretty democratic. I would say I've been fortunate there to launch businesses from scratch, like the hazmat stuff you talked about, the offline Alexa. It usually starts, and this is, I think, pretty common knowledge and a lot in press, is it starts with whoever has the idea, and it could be anybody. Like we've had warehouse associates come up with an idea, and as long as they can present the idea, they can go ahead with it. So people write this mock press release, which is imagining if you were to actually launch it, say in 1 year time, how would you read about the idea in the newspaper? So it will start with Seattle 2020. Oh my God, we are already 2020. 2020, June something. Amazon launched, blah, blah, blah. This is what it will solve for the customers, but really, really what it means for the customer. So that's where it always starts. It is, of course, followed up with like lots and lots of research and frequently asked questions. And then you work on the idea, and it's pretty democratic. You basically take inputs from people and refine the idea, and that's it. If it is interesting enough, large enough, and you've done enough research to say that the customer needs it, and you can show it, then you get the go-ahead and you start building.
So where do you present that? Is that like a company-wide presentation? Is it more like towards the management? How can we imagine?
Both. So both. So at team levels, usually there are hackathons and big idea presentations that every team is doing on a regular basis, and people are not limited to just the ideas from within the team. So if we are in the Alexa team and somebody came up with an idea that's actually not related to Alexa, they would still be able to carry that idea forward. And then if it's a good idea, then like it will be transferred to the right teams, the right VPs, who can then say, okay, I mean, eventually you need funding. It's like any startup setup, right? And you have a startup, you know how it is. So you have to raise the funding, which is ensure that it gets the blessing to get the engineers, and then you start building. So like when we were launching businesses, it was like one person just writing and describing the business idea, taking it to the senior leadership, and then started with prototyping and then finally launching.
Where does data come into the decision-making process? You mentioned like a democratized model or something. Everyone can contribute ideas, then a democratic vote, sort of, that's what I like. Is that still very opinionated, or is data already pulled into picking those projects that are pitched on the press release basis?
Yeah, so we try to use data at every stage. So if you are presenting an idea and it's not backed by data, I don't think it will go far. So you've already put in the data, your background research, your estimation of the market, your customer survey, customer reviews, talking to end customers. Like when I was launching the trade-in business, I actually went to all the used electronic stores physically possible in Seattle. I subscribed to all the used electronic online shops, comic stores from not just North America, UK, anybody who spoke English, and I still have them actually because I put my email there, and collect that information on what is the data, how many users, what customers want, what helps them. For example, things like when we were launching a used electronics marketplace, one of the things people had a problem with was when you buy an iPhone, people were not able to send their old phone right away because they needed some time to capture the data, contacts, etc. Now you can do it right away, but like a few years ago you couldn't. And so they didn't want to give their old phone right away. So they needed time to send it back. And this is something we realized only by talking to people that no, they don't want to give the phone away right away. But then this data needed to be included in the business plan. And so like the data is there at every point.
And like with the feature that was already rolled out in terms of offline capabilities, how do you, as you were still part of the team, measure success? And how do you then kind of tweak it further or even remove from the product at some point?
Yeah, so the two big use cases we were solving for on the offline, one was just smart home functionality, to be able to turn on lights and turn off lights and things like that without internet, because you don't need in real life internet to switch on the light. And so we thought that it was important that it should not be dependent on internet. And the other use case was cars, which, as probably people familiar with automotive know, it's a long cycle. But in terms of data, there isn't a ton of offline data to start with. Because if it's offline, we don't have the offline data because it's not functioning. So when we started, there were a lot of hypotheses that we had that, okay, if it's offline, do people speak slowly to Alexa? So instead of saying, Alexa, switch on the light, Alexa, switch on the light. But now probably people don't care. They speak normally. But then we started with a lot of hypotheses, and then we did a lot of what we call homework. So we would recruit customers who would test different things for us. And that's how we started collecting data on offline behavior and incorporating that feedback. So no, people don't speak slowly when device is offline. People have the same expectations when the device is offline. They don't want to know it is offline. They don't care it is offline. It should just work as it always did. And that was the default expectation. But then we collected data through iterative homeworks and customer interactions.
And like when you want these user insights, do you invite people like to Amazon, or is it you visiting people at home? I mean, I've seen like in smart speaker developments, there's also like rooms set up that look like a living room, that sound like a living room. Is that something then we can imagine you doing then in the office as well?
So overall, Alexa does all of that. So not in the office. There are all of those setups. And yes, a lot of the data was collected that way. For any confidential project, as you guys can imagine, it was not out in the open. So it was mostly people within the larger Amazon team, but not close enough. So not core Alexa team, because they'll be biased, but non-Alexa Amazon team that was recruited to do these things under a lot of confidentiality, of course, a lot of restrictions. You can't show it to your husband and your kids and blah, blah, blah. But that's how we were doing it, limited to that.
That's interesting. And yeah, I mean, like Amazon makes you write these press releases. Given you have now founded your own company just recently, could you talk briefly about Buy Properly, and then also if you take this process to the company that you're building now as well?
Yeah, so I was at Amazon for 5.5 years. I think it was not in the announcement, but I'm not at Amazon. I left 2 months ago. But since I was there at 5.5 years, I still work that way. And so I've launched a startup which is called Buy Properly, and it's a platform for investing in real estate. So fractional investing, micro investing. So if you have, at least in Toronto, real estate is super expensive. So you can't invest in property as much. But then what we are doing is allowing people to invest in 5, 10, 20% of the house. So they own that equity, we hold it, and we exit at the end of 5 years. And for 5 years, people get a share of the rental income. So that's the concept. I did start with a press release. Hopefully I'll use it when we launch. We haven't launched yet, but very close to launch. So I did write a press release for my own startup. I also wrote all the frequently asked questions and collected all the data and spoke to all the competitors worldwide. I know all the players in UK, Germany, US, Canada, Australia, Singapore that are doing similar things remotely. We're also building an AI model. So yes, a lot of my learnings there, because real estate has a lot of data. But we did start that way. We spoke to 150 people, me and my co-founder, before we even built a prototype for our startup. And then we were at a conference where we spoke to another 100 people during the day before we built any code. So we had spoken to 200-300 people before we actually started coding or actually refining our startup.
So given you're a female founder, like that must be also sometimes very interesting to talk, as you raised money as well, to lots of old white men, as they say.
Yes.
So what kind of things are you confronted with that are kind of a challenge, or what advice could you give other female tech people and founders that are there?
Yeah, I think I grew up in a girls' school, so I did not grow up with any stereotypes. I believed women could do everything. But then I went to an engineering college in undergrad. We had 27 women and 575 men. So that was my first exposure to being a minority. Then I worked in consulting. Welcome to the real world. And then I did business school in the US, which was very good. We had 40% women. I went to Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania, so that was good. But then I did investment banking during the summer. That was quite an experience. Amazon was not bad. We have a lot of senior female leadership as role models. But even with all of the support that you get at Amazon, I think there were times where I had to just defend the fact that things that I'm getting are just because I'm working hard. So like if I would negotiate good contracts, it was assumed that I'm just being aggressive and not nice to my vendors, which was not true. They were giving me those contracts because for the first 6 months I was working like a maniac. Or if I would get my project launched or funded, I wrote my press release. Yeah. For 4 months I got no funding and nobody noticed that. But then when I did get funding, they're like, oh yeah, you're a girl, that's why everybody's funding. No, I was for 4 months sitting alone in my office just trying to get the right documents in place. And you get into the startup world and it's like, whoa, what just happened? Like, I went to all the good schools, I have all the brand names, I'm working hard, but I still have to prove my credibility. And like, from my perspective, the things that I've learned is, as women, I think in general, we're good in making friends. We all have girlfriends. We like hanging out with girlfriends. So building an ally is super, super important. Like throughout my career, I've had women who've had my back, who've told me who to trust and not to trust, or tell me like, hey, just avoid this guy. He's spreading all sorts of wrong information about you. So building an ally is super, super critical. The second thing I learned the hard way is do not believe that you can put your head down and work hard and things will happen. This is not school. You don't get A grade if you are just working hard. You have to ask for it. You have to ask for the promotion and be out there and say, I want this. I want my project funded. I want this extra money, and I want this at this valuation when you're raising funding like I'm doing now. So you have to ask for it. Working hard is required, necessary, but not sufficient condition. And like third thing I feel is do not wait to be great. Like, let not great come in the way of very, very good. Like, do not wait to be the expert or till you consider you're an expert to go out and do things or ask things or achieve things and take the chance. Just ask and ask for the thing.
So unfortunately, we ran out of time. So thanks very much. It was my pleasure. And yeah, we'll probably see all of you around.
Thanks
very much.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you very much.